Welcome to Section 3 as we are looking at the MSBC4303 counseling process. And in Section 3, I want to try to give us a big picture. We've covered a lot of details so far, and so I want to try to take all those details and pull it together, hopefully, systematically for you to begin to think about this. And I want you to go back and watch those videos, this video and the other video, to really get the process down, because if you can use this, this could be very helpful for you, taking the biblical framework that we've been teaching you and put it to practice in various different ways in your ministry for counseling. So let's look at Section 3, the big picture for counseling. First of all, there are only two central commands that sum up all commands: love God and love others. Now, think about this. The two greatest commandments are to love God and love others. So therefore, the two greatest problems in life is a lack of love for God and a lack of love for others. So all we're doing in counseling is exposing people to these realities and bringing them to see it, to acknowledge it, and to begin to turn to move in love for God and love for others. As an unbeliever, that is the gospel, bringing them unto salvation so that they can learn to walk in love for God and love for others. If it's a believer, it's the reality that you belong to Christ. Let's help you get back in step, stop grieving and quenching the Spirit of God within you, and help you move back and turn from the lack of love for God and others and walk in love for God and others. So with that being said, number two, man's basic problem is a lack of love for God or a lack of love for others, which is what sin is. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Again, to disobey God is sin. To sin is a lack of love for God and lack of love for others. So all sin is a lack of love for God and others, and we've covered this. So this isn't something new. We've been talking about this through the counseling process. But we're just bringing the big picture together so that with all the details I've taught you, you can get back to some of the central realities. You're dealing with a person in all of their situations that they're being unloving towards God and unloving towards others. The key is to move in love for God and love for others. And that starts with bringing them to see it, bringing them to acknowledge it, and then moving them into action to address it. Now, with that being said, number three, man's lack of love for God and others show up in 5 places. If you learn this, every time you're dealing with someone, here's what you know. It's going to be a lack of love issue towards God and others. It's going to show up in 5 places. And as you're listening, you will always hear this. You will evaluate this. This is the C1 to C5 thing we talked about. So let's go back in our processes. Remember that. C1, thoughts, motive, desires. C2, communication. C3, behavior, manner of life, conduct, commitments. C4, relating to others. C5, serving others. When there's a problem in someone's life with a lack of love for God and a lack of love for others, it's going to come back to those areas. So as people are coming to you, you want to start now in your counseling process to categorize this. Is this a C2 problem, C3 problem, is this a C4 problem, C1 problem? You know up front, whatever category the problems exist in, the fruit is C2 to C5 and the root is C1. So if I have a problem with my communication, it stems from problems in my thoughts, motives, desires. If I have a problem with my behavior, manner of life, and those areas we mentioned, it stems from thoughts, motives, desires. If I have a problem with my relationship or in my serving, it always comes back to those areas. So whatever area you're dealing with that's being presented, understand that that's what they're presenting to you. And so we have to see that within the context of the root of that as well. Okay? So when there's a lack of love for God and others, you know something already. You know that the problems will always be between C1 and C5. Here's the next thing. We will see a lack of love for God and others in areas, again, C1 through C5, as we observe people's actions, reactions, or responses to other people and circumstances. So think about it. When people come to you, they're going to be talking about circumstances and other people. And we're going to see how they're reacting to circumstances and other people. What are we going to see? From C1 to C5, we're going to see them walking in loving or unloving ways. And we talked about neutral, but nothing stays in neutral. So mainly we're going to be looking at loving and unloving responses. Even though neutral will exist, that'll be where they may start in certain areas, but they're going to move one way or the other. And we're not going to focus so much on whether they're being loving, because when they come for counseling, they're not coming for neutral and loving issues. What they don't recognize is there's some suffering happening in their lives, and there is some unloving responses to suffering that's happening in their lives. We're going to bear the burden with them in their suffering, but we're going to help them to see the bondage, the sense of guilt, the AU fear, the AU fleeing, all the stuff that's happening in their hearts is because they're choosing to react or handle things in an unloving way, and God is trying to get their attention. And so we're going to bring them to awareness, to acknowledgement, and to action to put this off and walk in love in areas where they lack love via C1 to C5. So again, big picture, bringing it all together, hopefully, as you're listening and watching this particular video. So with that being said, number 5, as I'm repeating, our mission is to help people see the lack of love for God or others in areas C1 to C5, and to help move them from a lack of love for God and others to walking in love for God and others. This is what we're trying to do. Now, let's take all of that, and I'm just again reiterating, repeating big picture. So hopefully as you are walking through the videos and starting to walk and doing your counseling, you will come back to this over and over and over again so that you can think it through to say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I'm trying to go. Okay, so number 6, again, as we've just said earlier, the root lack of love will be found in C1. So all the stuff you're dealing with people, don't get caught up in all the fruit. Again, you want to evaluate it, deal with it, but you want to trace it and take it back to the root, which is C1, thoughts, motives, desires. The fruit lack of love will be found from C2 to C5. We will help people understand how C1 is driving C2 to C5. What does that mean? As people are telling you about their relational patterns and their serving patterns, we're going to help them to see how you're choosing to think about this person, how you're choosing to be driven by what you want from this person. Your desires and agenda is determining how you're reacting to this person. It's not what they're doing that's causing you to react the way you're reacting. It's the thought processes of your heart, the agenda and desires with this person that's causing you to react the way you are. If you want things to change, it's not so much that you can change them because you can't control them. You've got to change your own thoughts, your own desires, and your own motives, which will then influence and help us in helping you change your behavior or relational patterns within the context. See, and these are the things we have to help people to begin to understand and see. So number 9, we will then lead them to walk in love for God and others in C1 to C5. And the tools we have to do this are worksheets and homework assignments we give. So think about this. You've got an agenda. Someone between areas C1 and C5 are lacking love for God and others. And they are consumed with what they want or not getting, what they're getting they don't want, and all the stuff that comes along with it. So your agenda is you've got to bring them to awareness to see this. You've got to bring this to acknowledge this and then move them into action and to putting off the sin or the lack of love and walking in love for God and others. What will you use? You're going to use different kind of worksheets, and you're going to use different types of homework assignments. And we're going to talk about the concepts of worksheets. In other words, things that you can teach people so they can learn. And I'm going to give you some concepts that we'll talk about in another section. And then we'll look at, homework assignments, which we've kind of already done. But we may elaborate on that a little bit more to say, hey, consider this, consider that. But the idea more is you saying, okay, this is what I have. I've got awareness homework. I'm going to use that to lead them in this direction. I've got embracing God homework. I'm going to use that to move them in this direction. When you talk about what you have at your disposal, worksheets and homework assignments, and what do I mean by worksheets? Things that you develop, pamphlets and Bible studies and things that you could use to help people to see and understand. Homework assignments, things you're going to give them to apply, growth projects, if you will, to begin to see, to acknowledge, and to change in those areas. So this is what we have to work with in the process of counseling. Let's look at number 11. And here's what we see. Let's take all of what we've said, and we're going to put it in a little system again. Big pictures we've talked about to help you get an understanding of this whole counseling process. So number 11, therefore, as we observe people's actions, reactions, and responses to other people and the circumstances, or listen to them talk about these issues, we should listen, identify, and document our observations on 7 basic levels. All right, so someone's coming to you for counseling. They're looking and they need some help. You're going to begin to use this structure that I'm teaching you and start to document what you see on certain levels. All right, so what's the first level? Level 1, listen, identify and document the C1 to C5 issues being presented or discussed. So they come and they talk to you, well, Pastor, I'm having a problem, or, Sister so-and-so, I'm having a problem, and this is what's going on between me and so-and-so. Okay, so eventually you hear that and you go, okay, they're talking about a C4 issue. Relationships, or I'm having a discussion, or I'm having a problem, and I recognize that I'm not carrying myself well, or my health is not right, and I'm not doing what I need to do, or I'm dealing with pornography, or whatever that may be. Well, okay, that's a C3 issue. That's a behavior, manner of life issue. Well, I know I shouldn't be saying some things I'm saying, or blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's a C2 communication issue. Sometimes I feel and I want, and it's not fair. Why can't I have? Okay, that's a C1 issue. So, again, as they come at you, you want to be able to categorize what they are discussing. So you say, okay, here's the context. They're talking about C2, C3, C4. Now, what I don't want you to do is to go quick to interpretation. All of this comes from C1. That's true, but don't go there yet. You just want to take what they're saying and put it in the category and the context it fits in before we move into interpreting what needs to happen or interpreting what's happening in the application. You're just observing, putting things in categories. And that's the first level when someone comes. Secondly, level 2, listen, identify, and document what they can and cannot control according to the issues presented or discussed. So now think about it. You put it in categories. They're telling you the story, and you can say, okay, that's a C2, C1, C3, C4 issue, and you're putting it all in categories. And as you're listening to them, you want to ask, okay, what can they not control in this situation? What can they control? And then you're starting to give, again, a context based upon the concept of analysis that we talked about in section 2. Okay, they can't control this, but they can control this. So all these responses are exposing something. And so all you're doing now is you're putting this together to help you come with an idea of how to serve this person. Okay? Level 3, listen, identify, and document the person's actions, reactions, and responses to other people and circumstances being presented or discussed. So here's what they can and can't control. Let's look at how they're responding to the things they can and can't control. Okay, level 4, listen, identify, and document where their actions, reactions, and responses fit in the biblical framework. Back to what you've learned. Am I seeing A, you fleeing? Am I seeing A, you fear? Am I seeing a sense of guilt? What lack of love issues? What's going on? How can I pull all this together? Level 5, listen, identify, and document the belief systems, the agendas and desires being revealed from their actions, reactions, or responses being presented or discussed. What do they want? What do they believe? What is this exposing about the C1 as we're listening to them in the process? Level 6, listen, identify, and document the pride, the lust, the idols being revealed from their actions, reactions, or responses being presented or discussed. Okay, well, where are they self-centered? What do they want that they can't control getting, that they crave, lustful desires? What idols are they depending on to give it to them? So you want to think about and process this as you're listening to them. Level 7, or number 7, listen, identify, and document the C2 to C5 issues that are the byproducts of the C1 issues. So again, taking all of this, you're saying, okay, I'm looking at their actions, reactions. I'm seeing where the C2 is a byproduct of this self-centeredness, and I want what I want, and the person I'm using, a thing I'm using to try to get it. You're pulling all that together to have a context of interpretation, then that you can properly share with them and then give them proper application, if you look at it from that perspective. All right, number 12, we will lead them to see and understand these things through the worksheets and homework we give them. So remember, you've got a 3-step process. You may see all this with the person, but you've got to see where they are in their understanding. And so your goal, again, is to lead them from 1, awareness, do they see it, to acknowledgement, will they own up to it, and then to action, let's help them deal with it. So always think about that. I'm trying to lead people to awareness, to acknowledgement, and to action in order to address their issues. Number 13, we will lead them to renounce, repent, and replace these things with love for God and love for others through the worksheets and homework we will give them. That's our goal, leading them back. So They've got the awareness. They've made acknowledgement. So now we're going to move them into action. With the worksheets we develop and give them, pamphlets, workbooks, Bible scriptures, homework assignments, projects for growth we give them. We're going to lead them to, again, awareness, to acknowledgement, and to action, walking in love for God and love for others. Number 14, we will lead them to do all this according to the phases and stages of change the person is in accordance. So remember the phases and stages. If they're in the conviction stage or the teaching stage, wherever they are, we're going to take all of what we've learned and use that to help us lead them to the next step. So a person has realization. In other words, they're in the teaching stage. They see the truth, but they're not convicted about the truth they see. Well, now we're going to strategically figure out ways to take all of what we've learned and bring them to awareness, to see themselves in the context of the truth they understand. Well, let's say they see and they understand and they're broken. Well, now we're going to move them into correction and change. In other words, the correction stage and the training stage. We're going to help them to begin to, not only now that they have remorse, renounce, repent, renew, replace. And so, again, all of this is for you to structurally think about where the person is and how you can take the tools to move them through these realities. Are they aware? Have they acknowledged? Let's move into action. Now, taking all of what we've just said, if you look at the next page there, you've got a big picture there. Notice it's got communication, fruit, behavior, manner of life, conduct, commitments, fruit, relationship with others, fruit, serving others, fruit. And then in the middle, you've got the heart, which is the root. Thoughts, motives, desires. Well, we're just trying to help you see from this big picture, this is how people are. And so as you're evaluating them, all of what they are talking about or dealing with stems from the thought, motives, and desires of their heart. And so therefore, that becomes the thing that you want to eventually begin to focus on to help them see. If we try to change your conversation, your behavior, relational patterns, whatever, without dealing with the thoughts and motives and desires of your heart, there's not going to be real change. So, in summary, look at that little box there. In summary, people who come in for counseling are bringing in a lot of data to us, which are the fruit of their root sin. Their lack of love for God and others is sinful. Lack of love for God. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Lack of love for others. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these. When gathering data, we must look beyond the fruit sin and stay attentive to their speech for the root sin. Keep the root in your mind as they are communicating to you. Luke chapter 6, verse 45 says, a good man brings the good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks that the heart is full of. Do not get caught up in the fruit drama, but instead ask good questions to search out for the root. What motivated you to do that? What were you desiring at that moment, and so forth? If you stay in the fruit of the issues, you get caught up in the leaves, therefore blinding you to see the root. So I just wanted to read that because, again, big picture. There's a lack of love for God, a lack of love for others. There are 5 categories where it exists, and the root of it is C1. Where are they in their understanding of this? Your objective is to bring them to awareness if they don't have it. If they have awareness, to bring them to acknowledgement. If they have awareness and acknowledgement, you're going to move them into action to walk in love for God and love for others where they were lacking love for God and love for others. We'll see you in section 4.